Thanks to all of my new subscribers. Thanks for tuning in. I've gotten quite a few of them since this last video. It was sort of a little outburst of mine. But over time I've also gotten some people requesting me to say something about 9/11. So this is what I'm going to do today, or tonight rather. I will let somebody else basically do the talking for me, because he can say it much better than I could ever put into my own words. So this is an article written by Jeff Wells. He's a Canadian author, and it's a little satire. So it's called The Coincident Theorist's Guide to 9/11. That governments have permitted terrorist acts against their own people and have even themselves been perpetrators in order to find strategic advantage is quite likely true. But this is the United States of America we're talking about. As Jonathan Bush's Riggs Bank has been found guilty of laundering money and funds to terrorist groups, and actually fined by a U.S. court for a $25 million punishment, must embarrass his nephew George. But it's still no justification for leaping to paranoid conclusions. That George Bush's brother, Marvin, sat on the board of the Kuwaiti-owned company which provided electronic security to the World Trade Center, the Dulles Airport, and United Airlines means nothing more then you must admit that those Bush boys have done all right for themselves. That George Bush found success as a businessman only after the investment of Osama's brother Salem and reputed Al-Qaeda financier Khalid bin Mahfouz is just one of those things, one of those crazy things. That Osama bin Laden is known to have been an asset to U.S. foreign policy is in no way indicative that he still is. That Al-Qaeda was active in the Balkan conflict, fighting on the same side as the U.S. as recently as 1999, while the U.S. protected its selves, is merely one of history's little aberrations. That so many influential figures in and close to the White House, the Bush White House that is, had expressed just a year before the attacks the need for a new Pearl Harbor before the militarist ambitions could be fulfilled demonstrates nothing more than the accidental virtue of being in the right place at the right time. That the company P-Tech, founded by Saudi financier, placed on America's terrorist watch list in October of 2001, had access to the FAA's entire computer system for 2 years before the 9/11 attack, means he must not have been such big of a threat after all. That on May 8th of 2001, Dick Cheney took upon himself the job of coordinating a response to domestic terror attacks, even as he was crafting the administration's energy policy, which bore implications for America's military, circumventing the established infrastructure and ignoring the recommendations of the Hart-Rudman report, merely shows the VP to be someone who finds it hard to delegate. that the standing order which covered the shooting down of hijacked aircraft was altered on June 1st, 2001, taking discretion away from field commanders and placing it solely in the hands of the Secretary of Defense, is simply poor planning and unfortunate timing. That in the weeks before 9/11, FBI agent Colleen Rowley found her investigation of Zacarias Moussari so perversely thwarted that her colleagues joked that bin Laden had a mole at the FBI proves the stress-relieving virtue of humor in the workplace. FBI informant Randy Glass, working an undercover sting, was told by Pakistani intelligence operatives that the World Trade Center towers were coming down, and that his repeated warnings, which continued until weeks before the attacks, included the mention of planes used as weapons, were ignored by federal authorities, is simply one of those many what-ifs of that tragic day. That over the summer of 2001, Washington received many urgent senior-level warnings from foreign intelligence agencies and governments, including those of Germany, France, Great Britain, Russia, Egypt, Israel, Morocco, Afghanistan, and others, of impending terror attacks using hijacked aircraft, and did nothing, demonstrates the pressing need for the current new intelligence czar. That John Ashcroft stopped flying commercial aircraft in July of 2001 on account of security considerations had nothing to do with warnings regarding September 11th, because he said so in the 9/11 Commission report. That FBI Special Investigator Robert Wright claims that agents assigned to intelligence operations actually protect terrorists from investigation and prosecution, that the FBI shut down his probe into terrorist training camps, and that he was removed from a money laundering case that had a direct link to terrorism, sounds like yet more sour grapes from a disgruntled employee. That George Bush had plans to invade Afghanistan on his desk before 9/11 demonstrates only the value of being prepared. It's kind of a long essay. I think I'm going to make this a two-parter so I don't run out of time. Thanks, and move on to part 2.